Welcome to Tale Recap Plus. We see in the movie, the police arrive at the crime scene with Chief Inspector John Luther after scrutinizing the crime scene details. Luther deduces that Callum wasn't just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, but someone had intended to abduct him. Today I will recap the movie titled Luther the Fallen Son, released in 2023. An office cleaner called Callum Aldrich is in the middle of his shift when the movie at the beginning of the movie. He gets a call from someone he doesn't know who threatens to kill him if he doesn't come to a certain place within 15 minutes. Unless he is stopped, he will show Callum's private photos to his family and friends. It looks like Callum took a picture in naked dogs. Callum rushes to the scene of the accident and finds the driver lying on the ground and the passenger inside the car looking helpless. He calls 911 to report the situation and is immediately overwhelmed with fear. Moments later, the driver, who was acting like he was dead, wakes up and grabs Callum from behind, making him look like he needs to be taken away. This sounds like a job for the sexiest man alive the next morning. The police arrive at the scene of the accident and find that with the help of the details of the crime scene, Luther figures out that Callum wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone planned to take him away. Then he calls Callum's mom, Corinne, and tells her he will find her son. We think Luther shouldn't have made that promise since he has seen at least 100 people die. There is a man named David Roby among the bystanders who seems worried about Luther's role in the case. He turns out to be the one who did the kidnappings. Knowing that Luther will be a big problem for his plan, David and his crazy haircut look into all the illegal things Luther has done as a police officer to get Luther off the case. A few days later, Luther is taken to court and charged with many things, such as threatening suspects, fiddling with evidence, and taking bribes. Because he did these illegal things, he is now locked up in Hawksmoor maximum security prison. David is happy about this news because it means no one can stop him from carrying out his plans. Oh, and it was really simple. Not tough at all. David is a rich trader and serial killer who forces people to tell him their dark secrets in exchange for money. The other people in the jail hate Luther because some of them are there because of him. Because of this, they often work together to beat him up. The movie then jumps ahead a few years. When Corinne gets a call one day, she hears her son crying. It takes her a while to figure out where to meet him before she can talk to him. Corinne drives to the place, which is an empty house, without giving it a second thought. As soon as she walks in and calls for her son, she sees a terrible scene. There were dead bodies hanging from the ceiling, including Callum's. Soon, the parents of other victims show up, and it looks like everything was planned. Just then, the room is set on fire, and Corinne sees a masked man staring at her from the window. She runs away just in time, but the other parents are not so lucky. The next day, police arrive at the scene, and DCIO Det Rain takes charge of the investigation. After a quick check of the house, Rain calls a meeting of her team and says that she thinks that the acts were painstakingly planned and carried out over a long time. That means there will be a lot of info to sort through. Then she tells the team to find something that all the killings have in common. This will help them get closer to the killer. Though, Luther is still in jail when he gets an envelope with the number 65.8 written on it. That's what he thinks it is. A radio channel. What else could it be? And if you want to listen, here is a video of Callum's sad voice from right before he died. David's voice can also be heard on the recording. He says that he put him in jail and dares Luther to stop him if he can. After that, Corinne goes to see Luther in jail and scolds him for not finding the person who killed her son. She's not ready to listen when Luther tries to talk to her. After they talk for a short time, Corinne leaves. As she gets into her car, we find out that David brought her there. He is doing everything he can to act like he can comfort her. Are they now friends? I'm not sure. Why should I care? Later, Luther tells Rain about the show on his hidden cell phone, but she won't take any help from a criminal. She also tells Archie, one of her employees, to take Luther's phone away. Luther has no choice but to call Dennis, an old co-worker, and ask for help getting out of jail. But before they can talk about the plan any further, the jail guards take his phone away. In later years, Luther also talks to the jail guards about moving to a different prison with less security. The guards say they can't change the system, so they say no. When Luther hears this, he comes up with a plan for the prisoners to attack him, which will lead to him being moved by the system. Let's watch him punch some big guys. I don't know how that works or why he waited 2 years to do it. On the same night, one of the prisoners tries to do the unthinkable, which gets the attention of the cops in the control room. They save the prisoner, but all of a sudden, he knocks them out and gets away with the key. Was the guy telling a lie? Did the cops know about it? What the heck is going on? The prisoner then opens all the rooms, which causes chaos. After this, a lot of other prisoners join forces against Luther and beat him badly. After seeing this, the guards decide to move him, just as he had planned. Later, a black van stops Luther from being taken to another jail. Dennis and his men are the ones who take out the police cops and free Luther. After dropping him off, Luther pays them for their work. Luther promises to catch the serial killer now that he is no longer locked up. But when Rain hears that Luther got away, she calls retired cop Martin for help because he knows Luther better than anyone else. Martin agrees to help and checks Luther's things at the jail. He finds the radio frequency and figures that by following it back to its source, he can figure out where Luther is. At the same time, Luther gets to the broadcast spot and meets Derek, a tattoo artist. He wants to know who used his radio frequency, but Derek and his crazy haircut are not willing to give him any information at first. But after being pushed a little, Derek finally says that a man forced him to give up some private tapes. Derek says that he got the radio through a courier and was told to leave it on for 24 hours before throwing it away somewhere. Derek also gives Luther a smartphone that the blackmailer can use to call him. For this reason, Luther takes the cell phone and leaves just before the cops show up. In another scene, a group of David's employees watch over people from all over the world. It looks like they broke into phones, cameras, computers, and home security cameras to spy on people. This is how David gets his hands on their private actions, which he then uses to blackmail them into doing what he wants. He does this by having a bunch of secretaries type them into Excel spreadsheets. In the next scene, Luther calls Martin and asks for help finding a phone number. The second person reluctantly agrees and tells him where Piccadilly Circus is. After that, Martin also tells Rain what happened. Rain then sends SCO-19, the armed police, to catch Luther and the serial killer. When Luther gets to the place, he calls the number from Derek's cell phone, and David, who is already there, answers. This helps Luther find him. David grabs a kid from the crowd right away, holds him at knife point, and smiles in a scary way. He feels trapped and has no other choice. He says that this is only the beginning, which is very important. In fact, Sneagle, it's almost halfway there. The next second, some of the people he had blackmailed start jumping off of a nearby building, one after another, making a mess. David sees this as his chance to act quickly and heads for the train. Luther is after him, but the cops are also after him. Eventually, Luther catches up to David, and the two of them get into a struggle. Eventually, our hero gets the upper hand and pins David down, but a police officer quickly steps in to stop the fight. Luther tells the officer to handcuff David first, but the officer hits Luther to the ground. This lets David stab the police officer and get away. Luther then gives the cop first aid for his wound before running away himself. After that, David calls his inside man Archie and asks him why he didn't tell him that Luther escaped jail. When the second person doesn't answer, David promises to share his private videos with other people. Then he calls one of his men, Kakamov, and asks how their plan is going. As an answer, Kakamov gives him video footage of a group of teens that he has caught on camera. Luther, on the other hand, calls Martin and asks him to turn on audio mode. Then he tells them what he thinks is the thing they have in common. Luther says that David is threatening people by recording and killing them in secret videos. He also says that the fear of being caught and shamed is much stronger now than the fear of death. Yes, Luther just guessed all that stuff. While they are talking, Rain figures out where Luther is and sends a group of cops to catch him. But Luther knows this, so he breaks his phone and leaves the area. That same night, Rain calls her daughter Anu to tell her to go to bed early because Rain has to work and won't be home until late. David finds it easy to break into the house and take the girl because she is by herself. At the same time, Luther goes to see Corinne to learn more about the killer. He thinks that the killer went to see Callum because he knew something about him. Luther wants to know if Corinne has met anyone new since Callum's death because he thinks she might know who killed him. She replies by telling him about a guy named Tommy who she met at a support group. In this part, it's shown that Tommy is actually David. Martin points out a trend at the police headquarters. A man in his 40s has talked to at least 5 families. In recent years, the names have changed, but the details have stayed the same. Rain finds out David's name when she looks in their database. But David calls her and tells her about Anya before she can give this information to her team. Then he makes an offer. He will let the girl go if she brings Luther to him. After this, Rain contacts Luther and sets up a meeting at a diner. As they meet, she cleverly restrains him and gets ready to take him away. Luther isn't going to give up, though. He's just too big to fit in the trunk, even though she tries. He gets her to work with him by telling her that many kids like Anu are in jail right now and will die if they don't do something. After that, they look up David and learn about his ex-wife Georgette. He burned her face as a punishment because she cheated on him with another guy. She can't move around properly now that she is in a wheelchair. Also, she looks really scary. Rain and Luther go to Georgette's house and ask her to help them catch David. At first, she hesitates because she is afraid of what will happen if she tells someone. But when she hears about what's happening with Rain's daughter, she says that David owns land in Norway. Luther and Rain decide to go to Norway to free the prisoners now that they have a new lead. But before he leaves, Luther calls Martin and asks for one last favor. In the end, Archie finds out that Rain has left and tells David about it. When David hears this, he realizes that Georgette betrayed him and forces Archie to kill her. Archie sneaks into Georgette's house because he has no other choice. But just as he is about to fill her with a drug that will kill her, Martin and other police officers catch him. Luther asked for the same favor before because he knew David would try to hurt her. Because Archie isn't ready to go to jail, he gives himself the drug. The next scene shows Luther and Rain finally getting to David's snow-covered home in Norway. When they walk in, they see a bunch of mannequins and a girl hanging from the roof. Rain bursts into tears and lashes out at Luther because she thinks it's Anya. She says, "You should be up there," which is silly since it was her fault the bad guy got away earlier. She also tells him to go away. Luther leaves the room and makes his way to a secret basement bunker because he agreed. Soon after, Rain figures out that the body in the air is not Anya's. It's almost impossible that she didn't notice this right away. But Kachimov surprises her before she can get back to Luther. Must have Kachimov. When they get back to the basement, David tackles Luther and chains him up. After a while, he starts a live stream called The Red Bunker, where he tortures and kills people he has taken. People who follow him watch this live stream and enjoy the gory scenes. They also vote on what will happen to the victims. David tells his fans that he has a surprise opening act for them. And it's not just his stupid sweater. He says that Luther is a special guest. Soon after, Rain is also taken to the cave where Anu is being held hostage. After that, David tries to make the cops hurt each other. But at one point, Luther talks to the live audience and tells them that the cops are following them around with their IP addresses and are on their way. This makes David very angry because it makes his followers leave the live show out of fear. He then leaves the room and uses his phone to lock the door. With lightning speed, Luther kills a guard, frees Rain, and leaves the room just as the door locks. Rain, Anya, and Kachimov are now stuck inside. Soon after, the oil spray starts to work, which means a fire is about to start. Kachimov attacks Rain instead of opening the door, even though Rain begs him to. They get into a fierce fight, but Rain is able to knock out her opponents even though she is physically weaker. That punch did look a little weak, though. At the same time, David tries to get away in his Jeep, but Luther also gets inside. The two get into a fierce fight while the Jeep off-roads like a badass, hell yeah by a Jeep. But in the end, it hits an ice lake and breaks apart. David tries to swim away, but the ice traps him and kills him. Luther is able to use David's phone to open the bunker door and save Rain and Anya. But Luther's air is starting to get short at this point. Just as he's about to pass out, the police divers arrive. Yes, they came over, put on full dive gear, and got Luther out of the water in the 3 minutes since the Jeep hit the water. After these things happen, Luther is taken to the hospital in London right away. The TV also shows the news that the serial killer has been killed, which makes Karen happy. In the last scene, a high-level official approaches Luther and gives him a job at the police department. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.